The project had a name. Owlman insisted on that much. Names made things real, made them fundable, made them controllable. Helios Array. The name suggested light warmth progress. The reality hummed in the sublevels of Central Syndicate City like a tumor with ambition. 63 floors down, past the propaganda studios and the detention centers, the array's quantum sensors swept through dimensional frequencies most physicists didn't believe existed. Owlman stood in the observation deck, hands behind his back. The helmet reflected nothing. Below, technicians moved between consoles, their movements efficient, their questions unasked. Fear made excellent middle management. Readings are stable, one reported. No name. Names weren't necessary for functionaries. The array's primary display showed a false color map of adjacent realities. Most were dead ends. Collapsed timelines. Universes where entropy had won faster than expected. But one signal pulsed with something different. Energy. Infinite or close enough that the difference didn't matter. "Bring power ring," Owlman said. The technician hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, but Owlman caught it. Everyone caught it. The ring wasn't stable. Hadn't been stable since they'd begun preliminary scans 3 weeks ago. But stability was a luxury, not a requirement. Power ring arrived within minutes, the lamp clutched too tightly in trembling fingers. The ring itself pulsed green-black, a rhythm that didn't match any human heartbeat. "You feel it," Owlman said. "Not a question." "Yes." The voice came rough, uncertain. "It's screaming." "Quantify." Power ring moved to the primary console. The ring flared as it interfaced with the sensors. The dimensional map sharpened. The energy signature resolved into something more specific. Fear. An entire dimension soaked in it. Endless, renewable, pure. "It's feeding something," Power ring whispered. The words came faster now, almost eager. "A war. A conquest." The fear never stops, because the dying never stops. Owlman processed this. War meant weapons. Conquest meant hierarchy. Hierarchy meant negotiation was possible. "Can we open a controlled aperture?" "I can." Power ring swallowed. "Voltum says I can." No one asked who Voltum was. No one wanted that answer. The array shifted frequencies. Power built in the room pressure without sound. The air tasted like copper and burnt ozone. Technicians stepped back from their stations, instinct overriding training. "Execute," Owlman commanded. The rift opened, small at first. A tear in reality no larger than a fist hovering 3 meters above the primary platform. Wrong colors bled through. Reds that had no place in the visible spectrum. Shadows that moved against the light sources. Then the smell hit. Sulfur, charred meat. Something older, something that predated words like death or extinction. "Sealing protocols ready," a technician announced, voice climbing an octave. "Wait," Owlman said. Something moved in the rift. Not through it. In it, as if the tear itself had depth dimension distance that shouldn't exist in a gap that small. The first demon came through head first, bipedal roughly. Muscle and bone configured wrong joints bending in directions evolution had never attempted. Its jaw unhinged as it fell screeching. The sound bypassed eardrums, went straight to the part of the brain that remembered being prey. It hit the platform and lunged. Power ring reacted. Constructs materialized. Geometric shapes that wrapped the creature in cascading force fields. The demon thrashed. The constructs held. "Specimen secured," Owlman noted. 3 more came through. Smaller, faster. They scattered the moment they cleared the rift, scrambling up walls with claws that scored the reinforced steel. Technicians ran. Some made it to the exits, some didn't. Johnny Quick was already moving before Owlman's hand reached the comm. Red-black lightning traced the room's perimeter. The demons jerked, spasmed, collapsed. Neck bones shattered at supersonic impact. Quick stopped beside Owlman, not even breathing hard. Vermin control, Quick said. You want more? Not yet. Owlman watched the rift. It pulsed, now expanding by centimeters. The energy reading spiked. We need to understand the resource before extraction. Ultraman's voice came through the overhead speakers, distorted by distance and displeasure. I'm watching your readings from topside. You're opening a door to hell and calling it progress. Hell implies theology, Owlman replied. This is dimensional exploitation. Standard multiversal economics. It's eating Power Ring alive. Look at him. Owlman looked. Power Ring stood rigid at the console, both hands on the interface now. The ring had spread up the arm tendrils of green-black energy crawling beneath the skin. The eyes had gone distant. Volthoom sees them, Power Ring said. All of them. Billions. The fear is... A shudder ran through the frame. Exquisite. Pull back, Ultraman ordered. Expand the aperture to 2 meters, Owlman said. We need larger samples. Power Ring complied. The rift widened. Reality bent around its edges, space folding wrong. More demons started to pour through. Larger ones now. These moved with purpose coordination. They flanked, they tested the room's dimensions, they learned. Quick eliminated them with mechanical precision. The room filled with corpses that steamed and twitched. Then the rift convulsed. The object emerged, tumbling. 3 meters long, 2 wide. Stone or metal or something between. Runes covered its surface, glowing dull red. It crashed through the primary platform, through 2 sub-level floors, came to rest in what used to be a secondary server farm. Alarms screamed. Structural integrity warnings cascaded across every display. The rift sealed itself, collapsing to nothing in half a heartbeat. Silence rushed in to fill the vacuum. Owlman descended to the impact site. Power Ring followed, moving like a puppet with half its strings cut. Quick was already there, circling the object. Do not open Power Ring, read. The translation came without thought, pulled from somewhere the ring touched. Entombed by divine sanction, cursed, condemned, do not. Owlman considered this. Considered the energy readings. Considered the political capital already invested. Considered that Ultraman's concern was noted and irrelevant. The expansion reversed. The tear contracted violently, its edges grinding against themselves. Something massive was coming through, not pulled, pushed, expelled. It's a coffin, Quick said, or a prison. Close examination confirmed it. The runes weren't decorative, they were bindings, seals, warnings in languages that predated human civilization. The seals cracked, not a failure of age or damage. Active rejection. The runes flared once, bright enough to leave after images, then went dark. Stone that had held for centuries split along geometric lines. The lid fell away. Inside was a man, or had been. The armor told that story. Military functional, covered in carbon scoring and impact craters. One arm ended in a mounted blade, its edge still sharp despite the filth caked on it. The other hand rested on the grip of a weapon too large to be practical, too brutal to be anything but effective. The chest rose, fell, rose again. It's breathing, Quick said. Took a step back, another. That thing's alive. The eyes opened, no adjustment period, no confusion. The gaze focused, immediately swept the room with tactical assessment, registered threats, calculated angles. Then it saw the demons. The body moved. No warm-up. No hesitation. From horizontal to vertical in a motion too fast for the armor's weight. The mounted blade activated with a sound like tearing steel. The massive weapon came up one-handed. The nearest demon corpse was 3 meters away. Had been dead for 90 seconds, cooling in a spreading pool of ichor. The armored figure crossed the distance and destroyed it anyway. The blade went through dead flesh, through bone, through the reinforced floor beneath. Again. Again. Systematic, thorough, ensuring nothing remained that could regenerate, could rise, could threaten. Only when the corpse was sectioned into pieces too small to identify did the figure stop. It turned, looked at Power Ring, at Quick, at Owlman. The ring flared. Constructs materialized on reflex, walls, barriers, containment protocols. The armored figure looked at them the way a man looks at fog. Then it walked. Not toward the crime syndicate members, toward the sealed rift coordinates. The path took it through a load-bearing column. The column lost. Engage, Owlman said into his comm. Quick moved. Supersonic approach strike calculated for the helmet's weak points. The attack connected. The armored head snapped sideways. The figure caught Quick's arm on the return pass. The motion shouldn't have been possible. Quick operated in microseconds, perceptions accelerated beyond human tracking. But the armored hand was already there, closing on the limb with hydraulic finality. Quick reverse thrust. Pulled with speed force, enhanced strength. The grip didn't yield. The figure pulled back. Quick flew into the nearest wall, hard enough to crater the reinforced concrete. The armored figure released him and continued walking. All units converge on sub-level breach. Ultraman's voice came through the overhead. I'm coming down. Owlman watched the figure move. Watched it process the room's layout, identify the sealed rift's former location, calculate the path between points. No wasted motion, no fear, no recognition of the authority structure it had just violated. Who are you? Owlman asked. The figure didn't acknowledge the question. It reached the rift coordinates, found them sealed, studied the dimensional seams with that same tactical focus. Then it looked at Power Ring again. Power Ring stumbled backward. The lamp fell. The ring flared wildly, constructs manifesting and dissolving without coherent form. It knows. Power Ring gasped. Voltum says it knows. It's fought worse than us. It's killed worse than us. We're not enemies. Then what are we? Owlman asked. The armored figure turned away, started walking again. New trajectory now, toward the main access shaft that led to the array's control systems. The machinery that had opened the rift. The infrastructure that kept it stabilized. We're the door, Power Ring whispered. Owlman understood. Seal all access points, emergency protocols. Nothing leaves this level. The blast doors began to close. The armored figure didn't accelerate, didn't panic. Just adjusted its path, moving toward the nearest door before the seal completed. It would make it. Owlman's tactical analysis confirmed it. The figure would reach the upper levels, would find the array's core systems, would do what it had clearly done before to similar infrastructure. It would end the connection to hell, and it would go through anyone who represented an obstacle to that objective. The broadcast would need to go out within the hour. Frame the narrative before the narrative framed itself. Interdimensional terrorist. Threat to public safety. Crime syndicate as humanity's defenders. The usual script. Owlman activated his personal comm to Superwoman. Prepare a statement, he said. We have a situation that requires management. Behind him, the armored figure reached the blast door with 2 seconds to spare, slipped through the gap, disappeared into the ascending shaft. Quick pulled himself from the wall, crater ribs already healing at accelerated rates. What the hell was that? Owlman looked at the shattered sarcophagus, at the warnings written in dead languages, at the blood of demons that still smoldered on the floor. A mistake, Petons, he said, or a weapon. We'll determine which. Power Ring hadn't moved. The ring continued its erratic pulsing, Voltum's whispers inaudible to everyone else, but clearly audible to the bearer. What's it saying? Owlman asked. Power Ring's laugh came broken wrong. Run. The broadcast went live at 600 hours. Superwoman's face filled every screen in Central Syndicate City. Every screen in the eastern provinces. Every display that could receive a signal and couldn't be turned off. She wore concern the way other people wore jewelry. Visible, expensive, fake. Citizens of Earth 3, she began. voice pitched for maternal warmth with authoritative undertones. Focus tested, proven effective. At approximately 0300 hours, our dimensional research facility experienced an incursion. A hostile entity from an adjacent reality has breached our world. The feed cut to prepared footage, the sub-level damage, the shattered sarcophagus, edited of course. The demon corpses had been removed. Too many questions. The narrative needed simplicity. This entity represents an existential threat to our stability, to our children, to everything we have built together. Together. The word did heavy lifting, implied consent, ignored the detention centers. The crime syndicate is mobilizing all resources to contain this threat. We ask for your cooperation, your vigilance. Report any sightings immediately. Do not approach. Do not engage. The feed cut again. This time to Ultraman, hovering above the city's central plaza. The cape moved in wind that wasn't there. Propaganda department had mastered the heroic aesthetic years ago. We will protect you, Ultraman said. Not a promise, a declaration. This creature will be neutralized. Justice will be absolute. The broadcast ended. Screens returned to their scheduled programming. Smiling faces selling products no one needed. Game shows where losing meant more than embarrassment. The usual bread in circuses now with added reassurance. In the Syndicate's command center, Owlman reviewed the security feeds. 73 cameras tracked the armored figure's progress through the city's infrastructure. It moved through maintenance tunnels, utility corridors, spaces designed for machines, and the people who serviced them. It hadn't emerged to street level, hadn't engaged civilians, hadn't deviated from its trajectory toward the array's secondary stabilization nodes. Surgical, focused, worse than random violence. Random violence could be contained. This required prediction. Pattern analysis, Owlman commanded. The holographic display shifted. Red dines marked the figure's path. Blue icons indicated array infrastructure. Where red and blue intersected, systems had failed. Not destroyed. Disabled. Precise applications of force to load-bearing components, control systems, power relays. Each strike degraded the rift's stability by approximately 3%. At current pace, complete collapse in 48 hours. It's mapping our network, Owlman said. Learning the system as it goes. Johnny Quick stood near the exit, weight shifting foot to foot. The ribs had healed. The humiliation hadn't. Let me try again, Quick said. I wasn't ready before. Now I know what I'm dealing with. You know it can perceive your speed, Owlman replied. That advantage is gone. So what's the play? We let it dismantle everything we built. Owlman didn't answer immediately. The question was valid but premature. Data before decision. Pattern before response. Power ring occupied the room's corner as far from the displays as possible. The ring had quieted since the breach, but the bearer's breathing remained shallow, rapid. Fear as a chronic condition. What does Volthum say about it? Owlman asked. That it's hungry. Power Ring's voice came distant, hollow. Not for food, for purpose. It needs hell to exist so it can end hell existing. That's what it is. That's all it is. Poetic but useless. Ultraman said, entering through the primary access. No dramatic entrance. He'd been in the building. We need tactics, not philosophy. Tactics require understanding the opponent's objective, Owlman said. It's not targeting us. It's targeting the infrastructure that opened the rift. We are the infrastructure, Ultraman said. We built it. We control it. Destroying our work is declaring war on us. It doesn't declare, Power Ring whispered. It just acts. The holographic display updated. New red line. The figure had changed course, moving faster now. The target resolved as the feed updated. Quarantine Zone 7. What's in 7? Quick asked. Owlman already knew. Had known the moment the question became relevant. Specimen containment. The demons we captured during initial testing. You're still holding those things? Ultraman moved toward the display. I ordered them destroyed. You suggested destruction. I determined study had strategic value. And now, the display showed thermal signatures. The armored figure had entered the containment area. 37 demons, various sizes, sedated and restrained in reinforced cells. The cells started opening, not breached. Deliberately unlocked from the control terminal. It's releasing them, Quick said. No, Owlman corrected. Watch. The demons woke. Sedation flushed from their systems in seconds. Demonic physiology burning through the chemicals. They emerged from their cells, disoriented, enraged. The armored figure stood in the corridor's center, waiting. The first demon charged. The mounted blade took its head off at the jaw. The body continued forward on momentum. The figure sidestepped, let it crash into the wall behind. Two more came from opposite angles. Coordinated. Learned behavior from their brief time observing security patterns. The massive weapon fired. The sound came through the audio feed like reality tearing. The round hit the left demon center mass. Continued through it, through the wall beyond. Detonated in the next corridor over. The right demon leaped. Got close enough to rake claws across the armor. The claws left scratches, nothing more. The figure caught the demon mid-air. Drove it into the floor. Fired point blank until the concrete gave way. And the demon went through to the level below. This continued for 4 minutes. Systematic extermination. No wasted motion, no hesitation. The demons learned nothing because there was no time to learn. They died in the order they attacked, killed with whatever weapon was efficient. When the last one stopped twitching, the figure reloaded. Then moved to each corpse and destroyed it further. Bisection. Dismemberment. Rendering the remains non-functional beyond any possibility of regeneration. It's not destroying specimens, Owlman said. It's cleaning up our mess. Our mess, Ultraman's voice dropped an octave. Dangerous register. We didn't bring those things here. The rift did. We opened the rift. We kept them alive. We became complicit in Hell's presence on Earth 3. That's insane. That's its operating framework. Owlman gestured to the display. Study its behavior. It doesn't attack security forces unless they block its path. Doesn't harm civilians. Doesn't engage in collateral damage beyond what's necessary to accomplish its objective. This isn't aggression. It's extermination protocol. Against what? Hell, and anyone who enables Hell to exist. The silence that followed carried weight. Understanding spreading like a stain. Quick broke it. So we shut down the array. Seal the rift permanently. Demonstrate we're not enabling anything. After we've invested $3 billion in the project. Superwoman's voice came from the doorway. She'd arrived during the containment feed, silent, as reputation suggested. After we've promised the Council a renewable energy source, after we've staked our credibility on delivering results. Credibility versus survival, Quick said. Easy choice. Not for those of us who understand governance. Superwoman moved to the display, studied the armored figure. It had finished with the demons. Now it examined the containment facility's support systems. Mapping, learning. We don't bow to threats. We neutralize them. That's what separates order from chaos. It's not a threat we can neutralize with conventional response, Owlman said. Then we use unconventional response. Superwoman turned to Powering. You've been quiet. Voltoom must have insights. Powering flinched at the name. It wants me to feed it demons. Says the fear is pure, renewable. Better than anything we've harvested before. Can you control them? Control sie das Sandanitschenus. Powering's laugh came sharp broken. I can aim them. Point them at targets. They'll attack until destroyed. That's not control. That's livestock management. Acceptable. Superwoman looked at Owlman. We use the resource we've acquired. Release demons in controlled areas. Force the entity to divert from infrastructure targets to active threats. You're proposing to infest our own city. Ultraman said. I'm proposing tactical deployment of available assets. The demons die. The entity exhausts itself. We maintain control of the narrative and the array. Owlman ran the scenario. Calculated probable outcomes. Civilian casualties would be significant but manageable. Propaganda could frame it as the entity's fault. The council would accept losses if results followed. Deployment zones, he asked. Industrial districts initially, low population density, high structural integrity for containment. Superwoman pulled up district maps. If the entity responds as predicted, we escalate to residential areas as necessary. As necessary, Ultraman repeated. You're volunteering our citizens as bait. I'm volunteering them as evidence of the threat we're protecting them from. Martyrs serve the state better than malcontents. Power Ring moved toward the exit. The ring pulsed faster now, eager. I need to go. Voltum wants to start, wants to feed. Wait, Owlman said. Power Ring stopped, but didn't turn around. Document everything. Demon behavior. Entity response patterns. This is data collection, not just combat. Understood. Power Ring left. The ring's light faded down the corridor, green-black luminescence that made shadows move wrong. Quickie watched the exit. This is going to get ugly. It's already ugly, Superwoman said. We're just making it visible. The displays updated. The armored figure had left the containment facility. New trajectory locked, heading toward the array's primary power distribution center. If it reached that target system, collapse would accelerate from 48 hours to 12. I'm going, Ultraman said. Personally, end this now. Not yet, Owlman said. Let Power Ring deploy first, study the entity under combat stress, then engage when we have complete data. You're using me as a second wave. I'm using you as a decisive force. There's a difference. Ultraman's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. The command structure had been established years ago. Owlman planned. Ultraman executed. Deviation from that pattern led to chaos, and chaos was the enemy. The feed showed the armored figure entering a maintenance shaft. The cameras lost visual. Thermal tracking continued for 30 seconds, then flickered and died. The last image showed the figure looking directly at the hidden camera as if it had known the lens was there all along. Then darkness. It's adapting, Owlman said. Learning our surveillance network. How long until it's completely invisible to us? Quick asked. Unknown, but shorter than acceptable. Superwoman moved toward the tactical console. Then we accelerate the timeline. Power Ring deploys within the hour. Ultraman engages within 3 hours. We end this before it becomes unsustainable. And if the entity wins? Quick asked. Superwoman smiled. The expression had nothing to do with humor. Then we've learned what doesn't work, and we adjust. She left to prepare her next broadcast. The citizens would need reassurance, would need to understand that the violence to come was necessary. Protective. The work of a government that cared enough to make hard choices. The screen showed her face again, already in makeup, already in character. The smile had shifted. Softer now. More maternal. We will protect you, she said to the camera. To the millions watching. To herself. No matter the cost. In the sub-level maintenance shaft, surrounded by darkness and the smell of rust, the armored figure continued its work. The next power relay fell to precise blade strikes. The array's stability dropped another 3%. It had no interest in broadcasts, no concern for propaganda. It had found hell's doorway. It had found those who opened it. The rest was just math. The industrial district had a name once. Before the Syndicate rezoned, before the residents were relocated to housing projects on the city's edge, before the factories went automated, and the human element became redundant. Now it was just District 8 West. 70 square blocks of warehouses, processing plants, and infrastructure no one visited unless their job required it. Perfect for what came next. Power Ring stood at the district's northern perimeter, hands shaking. The ring pulsed with rhythm that matched nothing organic. Voltum's whispers had become a constant presence, no longer words, but sensations, urges hunger, given voice without language. Release them, the ring commanded through Power Ring's own mouth. The constructs materialized. Not cages this time. Portals. Temporary rifts pulled from the ring's connection to spaces between spaces. The demons had been stored there since containment suspended and green-black energy kept alive, because Voltum found their fear too valuable to waste. They poured through. Smaller ones first. The imp-class specimens, barely larger than dogs, but faster, meaner. They scattered across the empty streets, seeking warmth, seeking prey, finding neither. The district was dead. Had been dead for months. Larger demons followed. The ones with mass with muscle dense enough to shatter concrete with claws that could open steel like flesh. They moved with more purpose, spreading through the warehouse blocks in patterns that suggested pack intelligence. 27 demons total, everything Power Ring had managed to store before the bearer's consciousness started fragmenting under Voltum's influence. Now we wait, Power Ring said to no one. The surveillance feeds showed everything. Owlman watched from the command center, tracking each demon's movement, building behavioral models, calculating dispersal patterns. Quick stood beside him, already vibrating at frequency that made the air around him shimmer. "Give me the word," Quick said, not asking, demanding. "Not yet. Those things are loose in our city." "In an evacuated industrial zone," Owlman corrected. "Zero civilian presence, acceptable risk. For how long they'll spread? Which is accounted for. Power Ring will maintain containment via construct barriers at the perimeter. The entity will detect the demonic presence and respond. We observe its combat patterns under sustained engagement." Quick's foot tapped. Supersonic drumming that left hairline fractures in the floor tiles. "And when do I get to even the score?" "When the entity is sufficiently distracted." The feed updated. Thermal bloom in the district's southwest corner. The armored figure had entered through the underground tunnels, emerged in an abandoned loading bay. It surveyed the area, weapon raised, scanning for threats. A demon rounded the corner 3 seconds later. The entity didn't hesitate. Single shot. The demon's torso became a cavity. It fell, twitched, went still. 2 more emerged from a warehouse entrance. The blade work was efficient. Arterial spray painted the wall behind them. The entity moved forward before the bodies finished dropping. "It's engaging," Owlman noted. "Quick, you're authorized." Quick grinned. The expression held nothing friendly. Finally. He moved. The world blurred into streaks and after images. Quick crossed the distance to District 8 West in 4 seconds, navigated the streets, in milliseconds locked onto the armored figure's position through micro-adjustments in air pressure and thermal displacement. He'd studied the sub-level encounter. Knew the entity could track high-speed movement. Knew it could react with impossible precision. Knowing meant nothing if you were fast enough. Quick came from behind, trajectory calculated for maximum kinetic transfer. His fist connected with the helmet at 700 meters per second. The entity's head snapped sideways. The body followed. Crashed through a warehouse wall, through the interior, through the opposite wall. Came to rest in the street beyond, debris avalanching around it. Quick stopped at the impact site's origin point, shook out his hand. The speed formula sang in his bloodstream, every cell vibrating with potential energy. "Round 2, he said. The entity stood, no delay, no damage assessment. One moment prone, the next vertical. The helmet turned, locked onto Quick's position. Quick moved again. Flanking approach this time, strike aimed for the knee joint. Compromise mobility, end the fight fast. The entity shifted weight, not dodging, positioning. The blade came around in an arc that should have been too slow, too predictable. Quick adjusted trajectory mid-approach, angling higher. The blade passed below him by centimeters. The entity's other hand caught him by the throat. The grip was impossible. Quick existed in accelerated time. Perception slowed. Reaction speeds peaked. Nothing should have been able to track him, much less intercept him during active engagement. But the hand was there. Had been there. as if it had known where Quick would be before Quick made the decision to move. The entity slammed him into the ground. Pavement cratered. Quick's enhanced durability absorbed most of the impact. Most, but not all. Ribs creaked. Vision blurred. He phased into superspeed, vibrating his molecular structure to slip through solid matter. The technique had worked against every opponent who'd tried to restrain him. The entity's grip tightened. Quick felt bones grind. The speed formula screamed for more, flooded his system with enhanced metabolism, pushed his healing factor into overdrive. The ribs started to knit. The entity noticed adjusted pressure to compensate. Quick reversed vibration solidified through a supersonic punch at the helmet. Connected. The entity's head rocked back. The grip released. Quick rolled away, came to his feet 30 meters distant. His throat carried the grip's impression bruises already forming and fading as his healing factor worked. 3 ribs had stress fractures. Those would take minutes. The entity stood, regarded him, made no move to close distance. "You're good," Quick said, voice rough. "Better than good, but I've got unlimited stamina and you're running on borrowed time." The entity's response was to reach for something on its belt. A small device, cylindrical, with a trigger mechanism. It threw the device, not at Quick, at the ground between them. Quick saw it coming. Calculated trajectory, predicted impact point. Recognized it as a distraction, a feint meant to create openings. The device hit the street and detonated, not an explosion. A pulse. Electromagnetic discharge that fried every camera within 50 meters, every sensor, every piece of monitoring equipment. The feeds in the command center went dark. "We've lost visual," a technician announced. Ultraman leaned forward. "Switch to peripheral cameras. Get me eyes on that zone." The feed rerouted. Took 6 seconds. In a supersonic engagement, 6 seconds was geological time. When visual returned, the landscape had changed. The street was gone. In its place, a crater 40 meters across, ringed by debris and structural damage. The warehouses on either side had partially collapsed, their support columns severed at precise angles. The destruction formed a bowl, its edges unstable, its center a maze of broken concrete and exposed rebar. Quick stood at the crater's rim, breathing hard. The speed formula's high was fading, replaced by the crash that always followed overuse. His legs trembled. Minor detail. Ignore it. Push through. The entity stood at the crater's center, surrounded by terrain it had created. Uneven ground, unstable footing obstacles that would force Quick to choose his path rather than simply outrun his opponent. "Clever," Quick said. "Change the battlefield. Make speed a liability instead of an advantage." The entity raised its massive weapon, fired. Quick dodged. The round passed through the space he'd occupied, detonated against the warehouse behind him. The structure groaned, tilted, began to collapse. Quick moved to avoid the falling debris. The entity fired again. Another near miss, another collapsing building. The terrain became increasingly unstable. The safe paths, fewer the choices, more constrained. Quick understood the strategy. Couldn't appreciate it, but understood. He accelerated. Pushed the speed formula harder, felt his cells begin to burn with the effort. The world slowed to frozen tableaus. He could see individual dust particles suspended in the air, could track the micro-expressions on the entity's posture that suggested where the next shot would go. He moved through the debris field using falling rubble as stepping stones, closing the distance in a zigzag pattern that made targeting impossible. 10 meters, 5. Strike range. He threw everything into a single punch. All his momentum, all his mass, all the kinetic energy he'd built during the approach. The blow would crack that helmet open, would end this. The entity caught his fist in one hand, stopped it dead. Quick felt every bone in his hand shatter. The speed formula couldn't compensate fast enough. Healing factor lagged. Pain arrived in waves. The entity didn't follow up. Just held him there, suspended in the moment of impact, forcing Quick to confront the reality. Speed meant nothing if your opponent didn't need to be faster, just needed to be there when you arrived. The entity released him, stepped back, gestured with the blade toward the crater's edge. An invitation to leave. Quick stood there cradling his broken hand, feeling the formula's crash intensify. His legs weren't trembling anymore. They were shaking. The cellular exhaustion was catching up. Accelerated metabolism had costs, and he'd just maxed the credit limit. "I can keep going," Quick said. Knew it was a lie. Said it anyway. The entity turned away, dismissed him, began walking toward the next target, some piece of array infrastructure Quick didn't care about anymore. "I said I can keep going." The entity paused, looked back. The helmet revealed nothing, but the posture said everything. "You can't." Quick felt the withdrawal symptoms intensify. The speed formula demanded more. His body demanded rest. The two requirements were incompatible. He'd pushed too hard, stayed too fast, burned through reserves that took hours to replenish. He could force it. Take another dose, override the safety limits, fight until his cells tore themselves apart at the molecular level. Or he could retreat, recover, accept that this engagement was lost. Pride versus survival. Quick looked at the entity's armored back, at the casual dismissal, at the certainty that he wasn't worth finishing off because he'd already been beaten. He ran, not in combat, in withdrawal. Supersonic evacuation from a battlefield that had stopped being a battlefield the moment the entity changed the terrain. He didn't stop until he reached the district's perimeter, where Power Ring's constructs still held where the demons were contained, where Owlman's cameras could see him collapse against a wall and vomit from the formula's backlash. In the command center, Owlman reviewed the footage, noted the tactical adaptation, the environmental manipulation, the precise calculation of Quick's limitations. "It's not just fast mouse," Owlman said. "It predicts, observes combat patterns, and builds countermeasures in real time." Ultraman watched Quick's retreat on the monitors. "He's done. Won't be combat effective for hours. Acceptable loss. We gained valuable data. We gained embarrassment." Ultraman moved toward the exit. "First me now, quick. The Syndicate looks weak. That's unacceptable." "Where are you going?" "To restore the image. To show the entity and everyone watching that we don't retreat." Owlman ran probability calculations. Ultraman versus the entity current data set modified combat environment. The numbers weren't encouraging. Wait for Power Ring to tire it out. Demon attrition plus sustained combat will create openings. "I don't need openings." Ultraman's cape billowed despite the command center's still air. Dramatic effect built into the fabric itself. "I need to remind this thing what happens when you challenge gods." He left before Owlman could formulate an argument that would work, not that arguments worked on Ultraman when his ego had been engaged. The symbol had been challenged. The symbol would respond. Owlman turned back to the monitors. The entity had resumed its mission. 3 more array nodes destroyed in the time Quick had been retreating. Stability down to 61%. Power Ring appeared on the feed, directing demons toward the entity's path. The creatures attacked with bestial fury. The entity methodically dismantled them. Each kill took seconds. No wasted motion, no fatigue evident. Owlman opened a new analysis window. Started building a combat profile based on observed behavior. Weakness had to exist. Everything had weaknesses, even things that shouldn't exist. The entity finished with the demons in its immediate area. Moved to the next infrastructure target. The blade rose, fell. Another node went offline. Stability 58%. "Accelerate the timeline," Owlman said into his comm. "Tell Ultraman he's authorized to engage immediately. We're running out of time." On the monitors, the entity paused. Helmet turned upward, as if tracking something in the sky. Something approaching fast. Ultraman arrived like a meteor heat vision, already firing the beams bright enough to overload the camera sensors. The entity moved. Not fast enough. The beams caught it in the chest. The armor glowed red, then white. The entity crashed backward through another warehouse wall. Ultraman descended cape, settling around his shoulders like judgment. "Now you face a real threat," he said to the smoke and debris. The entity emerged from the destruction. Armor scorched, but intact. It looked at Ultraman, assessed, calculated. Then it did something it hadn't done before. It reached for a different weapon. Ultraman had fought gods before. Pretenders, mostly. Beings who called themselves divine because they'd accumulated enough power to forget what it meant to bleed. They all bled eventually. Heat vision lanced across the ruined district twin beams that could melt through vault doors, through battle tanks, through anything that thought armor made it safe. The armored figure dove behind a collapsed warehouse wall. The beams followed, carved through reinforced concrete like it was smoke. "You can't hide," Ultraman called out. Voice amplified, carrying across the debris field. "There's nowhere on this planet I can't see you." X-ray vision tracked the thermal signature. Still moving. Still intact despite the chest strike that should have cooked anything organic inside that suit. Ultraman descended, boots touching rubble. No need to hurry. The target was contained, outmatched, learning the difference between surviving demons and facing true power. The figure emerged from cover, not retreating, advancing. It had swapped weapons, the massive firearm, mag locked to its back, replaced by something smaller. A sword, if swords could glow with energy that made the air ripple and hiss. "Interesting choice," Ultraman said. "Melee range against someone who can boil your blood from 50 meters away." The response was motion without warning. Closing distance in a sprint that ate up ground with mechanical efficiency. No superhuman speed, just relentless forward momentum. Ultraman fired again. The figure shifted trajectory mid-stride, the beams missing by centimeters. It threw something small, cylindrical, already armed. Ultraman's enhanced perception tracked the object, identified it as an explosive, calculated blast radius. Negligible threat. He let it detonate against his chest. The shaped charge would have torn through tank armor. Against Kryptonian physiology, it was a camera flash. Bright, brief, meaningless. Except it wasn't alone. 3 more devices hit the ground in a triangle pattern. They activated simultaneously, not as explosives, but as emitters. Electromagnetic pulses synchronized to create a field that made Ultraman's vision fracture static, bleeding across his enhanced senses. Jamming technology. Crude but effective. The sword came in low, angled for the knee joint. Ultraman moved on. Instinct caught the blade between his palms. The energy field burned against his skin. Actual pain. Minimal but present. "You made me feel that," Ultraman said, almost impressed. He twisted, applying leverage that should have snapped the blade or torn it from the figure's grip. Neither happened. The weapon held. The grip remained locked. They stood there, strength against strength, for 2 full seconds. Then Ultraman stopped playing fair. His breath came out as hurricane-force wind concentrated into a cone that could flatten buildings. The figure's feet left the ground body, tumbling backward through the air. It hit a warehouse 60 meters away, crashed through the outer wall, disappeared into the structure's interior. Ultraman's vision cleared as the EMP devices exhausted their charge. He tracked the thermal signature again. Still moving. Still combat-capable. "Durable," he acknowledged. "I'll give you that." He flew forward, building speed, crashed through the warehouse wall where the figure had entered. The interior was a maze of industrial equipment assembly lines, left to rust support columns every 10 meters. Bad terrain for flight, perfect terrain for ambush. Ultraman slowed, hovering 3 meters off the ground, scanning methodically. Thermal imaging showed nothing. The figure had gone cold, either through some kind of heat-masking technology or the support column to his left exploded, not the whole column. Just the base cut through with precision that made the upper structure collapse sideways. Ultraman dodged fast enough to avoid the main mass, not fast enough to avoid the debris cloud that followed dust and particulate that clogged his enhanced vision. 2 more columns fell. Then 4. The warehouse began to collapse in a cascade, each failure triggering the next. The figure had mapped the load-bearing structure, calculated the exact sequence to bring the entire building down. Ultraman burst upward through the roof into open air. Below, the warehouse folded in on itself with the grinding roar of failing infrastructure. The figure emerged from a ground-level access door 30 seconds later, covered in dust, but otherwise undamaged. It had stayed inside during the collapse, used the chaos as cover, exited only when safe. "You fight like a soldier," Ultraman said, descending to street level again. "Tactics, preparation, exploiting terrain." The figure said nothing, just raised that glowing sword again. "I fight like a god." Ultraman moved at full speed, not holding back anymore, not testing. The distance between them vanished. His fist drove toward the helmet with enough force to crater pavement. The sword came up, not to block, to redirect. The blade's edge caught his wrist, used his own momentum to guide the punch past the target. Ultraman's fist buried itself in the street, instead concrete fragmenting in a radius that swallowed 3 city blocks. The figure was already moving, circling to his exposed flank, the sword arcing toward his ribs. Ultraman spun, caught the blade again, ripped it from the figure's grasp, this time through sheer strength. The weapon flew across the street, embedded itself in a building facade. "No more toys," Ultraman said. He grabbed the figure by the chest plate, lifted it off the ground, flew straight up. Terminal velocity in 3 seconds. The city shrank below them. The air grew thin, cold atmospheric pressure, dropping toward levels that made human respiration impossible. "Let's see how well you breathe at altitude." 2 kilometers up, 3, 4. The figure didn't struggle, didn't panic, just hung there in Ultraman's grip helmet, reflecting the sky. At 6 kilometers, Ultraman stopped ascending. "Last chance. Surrender now and I'll make the fall quick." The figure's response was to punch him in the throat. Not superhuman strength, just precise targeting, compressed force delivered to the exact point where Kryptonian physiology kept its respiratory functions. Ultraman's grip loosened. Not much. Enough. The figure twisted free, already falling. Ultraman watched it drop. Calculated terminal velocity, impact force, probability of survival. Even with that armor, a fall from this height would be catastrophic. Organs would rupture. Bones would shatter. Justice would be served. The figure fired its grappling hook mid-fall. The device shot upward, magnetic clasp, locking onto Ultraman's belt. The cable went taut. The figure's fall arrested with a jerk that should have dislocated shoulders. Then it started climbing, hand over hand, using Ultraman as an anchor point. The audacity was almost admirable. Ultraman heat-visioned the cable. The metal glowed, melted, snapped. The figure resumed falling. Fired again. This time, the hook caught Ultraman's cape. The fabric was reinforced, built to survive supersonic flight. It held. The figure reeled itself in, climbed the cape like a rope, reached the shoulders, drove the wrist-mounted blade into the gap between Ultraman's helmet and chest plate. The blade found skin, penetrated, drew blood. Ultraman roared, spun in midair, threw the figure off with enough violence to leave after images. It fell again, tumbling end over end. This time, Ultraman followed. He caught up at 3 kilometers, grabbed the figure's leg, reversed their positions. Now he was above the figure, below gravity, doing the work. "You wanted close quarters," Ultraman said, driving punches into the armored torso. Each impact, sonic boomed. "Here's your wish." They hit the ground together. The crater formed instantly. 30 meters across, 20 deep. Every window in a 5-block radius shattered from the pressure wave. The figure lay at the crater's center. Armor cracked, one arm bent wrong. Ultraman stood, breathing hard. The neck wound was already closing, Kryptonian healing factor erasing the damage. His cape was ruined, the lower half burned away from the grappling hook's friction. "Stay down," he said. The figure sat up, started to stand. Ultraman's fist caught it mid-rise, drove it back into the crater floor. Again. The impacts registered on seismographs 3 cities over. Stay, down. The figure stopped trying to stand, not because it surrendered, because it changed tactics. Its free hand found a device on its belt, activated it. The rift tore open 5 meters away. Small aperture, unstable. Maintained by the portable generator, Owlman's people hadn't known the figure had acquired, probably stripped from one of the array's remote nodes. Demons poured through, not the specimen's power ring had deployed. Fresh ones, pulled directly from whatever hell dimension the array had been tapping. They came through burning, screaming, disoriented by dimensional transit. The figure destroyed the generator. The rift collapsed. Trapped the demons on Earth 3's side. 37 of them, all focused on the nearest heat signature, Ultraman. Clever, Ultraman admitted. The demons attacked in a wave. Claws and teeth and demonic strength that could rend steel. Against someone else, it might have worked. Against Ultraman, it was an annoyance. He tore through them. Heat vision bisecting torsos. Freeze breath coating limbs until they shattered. Brute strength reducing skulls to pulp. The fight took 90 seconds. When it ended, the crater was filled with demon corpses in various states of destruction. Ultraman turned back to where the figure had been. Gone. Thermal scans showed the trail. Already 2 blocks away, moving through the underground tunnels again, leaving Ultraman with a battlefield full of evidence that demons existed, that the rift was unstable, that the Syndicate's grand project was bleeding hell into their world. The broadcast crews would arrive within minutes. They always did, monitoring Ultraman's movements, ready to capture the heroic imagery. This time they'd find carnage. Demon remains. Questions that couldn't be answered without revealing what the array really did. Owlman's voice came through Ultraman's earpiece. Status. Target escaped. Used demons as distraction. Did you eliminate it? No. Silence on the channel. Then, return to base. We need to reassess. Ultraman flew upward, away from the crater, away from the evidence. Behind him, the first news drones were already arriving, cameras recording everything. The narrative would need adjustment. Superwoman would earn her keep tonight. In the command center, Owlman reviewed the engagement footage. Noted the tactical evolution. The figure had studied Ultraman's fighting style during their encounter, identified weaknesses, exploited them. It learned, adapted, improved. Power Ring stood at the observation window, staring at nothing. The ring had gone quiet after the demon deployment, Voltum's whispers fading to background static. The bearer's hands trembled. It's getting worse, Power Ring said. Quantify. The ring, it's not listening anymore. When I deployed the demons, it wanted more. Wanted to open bigger rifts, pull through stronger specimens. You maintain control. I maintain nothing. Voltum let me keep control, this time, because it was amused. Owlman filed this information under growing concerns. Power Ring's utility was declining as Voltum's influence increased. Soon the bearer would become a liability rather than an asset, but not yet. They still needed the ring's abilities. Prepare for another deployment, Owlman said. Larger scale. If we can't eliminate the target through direct engagement, we exhaust it through attrition. How many demons? All of them. Power Ring turned. The expression behind the mask was invisible, but the body language spoke clearly. Fear. Not of the armored figure, of what Owlman was asking. That's not deployment. That's an infestation. That's tactics. The target has proven it will prioritize demon elimination over infrastructure destruction. We use that priority against it. And when the demons spread beyond control, when they start killing civilians, then we have evidence of the threat we're protecting the population from. The narrative writes itself. Power Ring's laugh came broken. You're going to hell-proof your own city to trap one intruder. I'm going to create a combat environment where every variable works in our favor. Owlman pulled up deployment maps. District 8 West was no longer viable. Too damaged. Too visible. We'll use the residential zones in the eastern quarter. High population density. multiple escape routes for controlled demon dispersal. The target will have to choose between infrastructure and innocent lives. It'll choose infrastructure. You saw the data. It doesn't care about optics. Then it reveals itself as the threat we've been claiming it is. Either outcome serves our purpose. Power ring moved toward the exit. The ring pulsed brighter now, responding to proximity to the rift or to Voltoom's eagerness. Hard to tell which anymore. Wit, I'll need an hour. Voltoom wants to savor this. After Power Ring left, Owlman opened a secure channel to Superwoman. Prepare the Eastern Quarter broadcast. Standard evacuation protocols, but delayed implementation. I want maximum civilian presence when the deployment begins. Casualties will be significant. Acceptable losses in service of the larger objective, which is proof that the entity is the villain, that we are the protectors, that our methods, however harsh, are justified by the threat we face. On the monitors, the armored figure had reached another array node. The blade rose and fell. The system's stability dropped another percentage point. And if it destroys the array before we can turn public opinion, Superwoman asked, then we've lost the energy project but maintained power. The array was always secondary to the Syndicate's authority. He ended the transmission. Pulled up the combat profiles he'd been building. 3 engagements now. Johnny Quick, Ultraman, both defeated or stalemated. The pattern was clear. The figure didn't win through superior strength or speed. It won through preparation, adaptation, exploitation of enemy tactics. It fought like someone who'd been fighting for a very long time. That suggested a weakness. Everything that fought eventually got tired, eventually made mistakes, eventually failed. They just needed to accelerate the timeline. Owlman opened another channel. Send word to Alexander Luthor. Tell him the Syndicate is interested in his proposal, whatever that proposal was. Luthor had been sending coded offers for 3 days ever since the array breach. Owlman hadn't responded because responding to Luthor meant acknowledging his existence, his resources, his potential as a threat. But now they needed every advantage. Even if it came from the crime syndicate's greatest enemy, the broadcast played on every screen. Superwoman's face composed, despite the footage running behind her. Demon corpses. Shattered infrastructure. The crater where Ultraman had driven the armored intruder into the earth. The threat remains active, she said. Measured tone, rehearsed concern. But make no mistake, the crime syndicate is winning. Every engagement weakens this creature. Every battle brings us closer to total neutralization. The footage cut to Ultraman hovering above the city cape, restored posture radiating invincibility. Stock imagery from last month. The cape he'd actually been wearing had burned away at 6 kilometers altitude. We ask for your continued patience, your continued trust. Together, we will emerge stronger. The word together did its work again. Manufactured unity, compulsory solidarity. The broadcast ended. Screens returned to normal programming. In the Eastern Residential Quarter, families watched the message and felt reassured, felt protected, felt exactly what they were supposed to feel. They didn't notice the evacuation warnings had been delayed by 90 minutes. Power Ring stood on a rooftop 3 blocks from the quarter's central plaza. The ring blazed now green-black energy, crawling up both arms, threading through veins, like infection. Voltoom's voice had become a constant pressure against the inside of the skull. Open it wider, the ring commanded. Give me everything. The designated perimeter is irrelevant. I want the whole quarter. I want thousands. Power Ring's hands shook as they rose. The constructs formed. Not portals this time. A single massive rift 30 meters across, suspended above the plaza like a wound in reality. Demons poured through, not dozens. Hundreds. Every specimen Voltoom had stored, every creature pulled from Hell's armies during the array's test runs. Imps that moved in swarms. Brutes with muscle dense enough to crack concrete. Flyers with wingspan that blotted streetlights. They spread through the quarter like floodwater, finding every available space. The first screams started within seconds. Power Ring tried to close the rift. The ring wouldn't respond. Volthoom held control, feeding on the terror that bloomed across 6 city blocks, growing fat on fear that tasted like honey and ashes. "Please," Power Ring whispered. "Not yet," Volthoom said. "Let them run. Let them hide. Let them learn what powerlessness means." In the Array's monitoring station, Owlman watched the thermal signatures multiply across the quarter's map. Red dots spreading like disease. Civilian vitals spiking heart rates, accelerating stress hormones, flooding systems. Perfect chaos. Owlman had ordered the safeties removed days ago. Yield mattered more than control. The decision was paying dividends now, even if the cost was measured in civilian casualties. "Target status," he asked. A technician checked the tracking data. "Still in the industrial sublevels, 4 kilometers from the eastern quarter. Time to civilian contact at current pace, 18 minutes. Owlman opened the broadcast channel to the quarter. "Attention residents of eastern quarter sectors 12 through 18. A demonic incursion is in progress. Evacuate immediately to designated shelters. This is not a drill. Too late to matter." The shelters were designed for conventional threats, fires, chemical leaks, structural collapse, not for demons that could tear through reinforced doors like paper. But the announcement served its purpose. Created panic. Pushed civilians into the streets where cameras could record their flight, their terror, their dependence on Syndicate protection. The feeds showed families running, showed demons catching them, showed what happened when claws met flesh. "Ultraman is en route," a technician reported. "Tell him to maintain visible presence, but minimal intervention. We need footage of the threat before we can show footage of salvation." The technician hesitated. "Sir, civilian casualties are being documented for propaganda value. Continue monitoring." "That's easy." The armored figure emerged from the sublevels into an access corridor 4 blocks from the quarter's perimeter. The sounds reached it first. Screams, demonic screeching, the particular acoustic signature of mass panic. It processed this information, calculated the threat level, compared it against the mission objective. The nearest array node was 2 kilometers northwest. Critical infrastructure, high-value target. Destroying it would accelerate system collapse to terminal levels. The demonic incursion was southeast, high civilian density, active killing. The decision took less than a second. The figure turned southeast, started running. Owlman watched the target's trajectory change on the monitors. Felt something close to satisfaction. "It's responding, hunting," he said. "Predictable behavior confirmed. It prioritizes active threats over strategic targets." "Should we redirect Ultraman?" a technician asked. "Not yet. Let the entity engage first. Exhaust itself on demon elimination. Ultraman intervenes when the target is weakened." The figure reached the quarter's perimeter. Didn't slow. Crashed through a storefront window, emerged on a street packed with fleeing civilians and hunting demons. The weapon came up, fired. A brute-class demon 20 meters away lost its head and most of its torso. The body crashed through a parked vehicle. Civilians scattered, some toward shelters, some deeper into the quarter. Some froze, unable to process the armored figure as friend or threat. The figure ignored them. Moved through the street like a systematic cleansing protocol. Shotgun rounds for close targets. Blade work for anything within melee range. Efficiency without mercy. A demon leaped from a second-story window. Claws extended. The figure caught it mid-air, redirected its momentum into the pavement, finished it with a point-blank shot that left a crater where its chest had been. 3 imps came from a side alley. The figure's free hand grabbed something from its belt, a grenade cylindrical, already primed. Threw it into the alley. The explosion came muffled, followed by silence. It advanced deeper into the quarter. The demon count in its immediate vicinity began dropping. 53, 47, 39. Volthoom felt the kills, felt the fear sources wink out. The ring's glow intensified, furious at the interruption. "I can't control it. Then summon more. Replace what it destroys. The rift is at maximum aperture. Any wider, and I lose cohesion completely. You respond to demons? Ultraman said. Interesting. I thought you only cared about infrastructure. Stop it! Voltoom commanded through Power Ring's mouth. Then maintain what we have. Let it tire itself. Ultraman arrived at the eastern quarter with appropriate fanfare. Descent from above, Cape billowing landing that cracked pavement for dramatic effect. News drones tracked his every movement. He found the armored figure 3 blocks into the quarter, standing in the center of a street filled with demon corpses. The figure was reloading methodical motions, despite the chaos. The figure slammed a fresh magazine home. Raised the weapon. Those are civilians behind you. Ultraman gestured to the families huddled in a storefront. Will you risk their lives shooting at me? The weapon's barrel shifted. Aimed past Ultraman at something behind him. Ultraman turned. A demon had been creeping toward his position, trying to flank. The figure's shot took it through the skull before it could complete the approach. Point made, Ultraman said. But those people are still here, still in danger, because of you. The figure said nothing. Started walking. Not toward Ultraman. Around him, continuing its systematic purge of the quarter. Ultraman moved to intercept. We're not done. Heat vision lanced out. The figure dove-rolled, came up behind a parked vehicle. The beams melted, the vehicle's engine block, superheated metal, sprang across the street. The figure emerged from cover, fired a device at the ground between them. Electromagnetic pulse. Ultraman's vision fractured again, static bleeding across his enhanced senses. 3 seconds of disruption. The figure used them to close distance. Not to attack Ultraman. To reach a building where screams indicated trapped civilians. It kicked the door off its hinges, disappeared inside. Ultraman's vision cleared. He pursued, crashed through the building's front wall rather than use the door. Interior was a residential complex. 3 floors. Families on each level, some barricaded in apartments, some trying to reach the exits. Demons in the stairwell. 5 of them blocking the evacuation route. The figure was already engaged. Blade work in the confined space, systematic butchery. No room for firearms without risking civilian casualties. Just steel and precision. Ultraman fired heat vision at the ceiling above the demons. Brought rubble down on them, crushed 3 immediately. The remaining 2 turned toward this new threat. The figure killed them both before they could refocus. Decapitation, bisection, professional work. Then it turned to Ultraman. You're trying to help, Ultraman said. I can see that. But this situation exists because of you. The Syndicate opened the rift for research. You attacked us. We responded with necessary force. The figure's only response was to gesture toward the stairwell. Civilians needed evacuation. The argument could wait. Ultraman's jaw tightened. Fine. Get them out. Then we finish this. He flew to the upper floors, used super strength to tear open barricaded doors, carried families down through the building's compromised structure. He didn't regard the families, didn't acknowledge their gratitude. His attention stayed fixed on the drones circling outside their cameras, tracking every movement. The figure worked the ground floor, clearing the route to street level, eliminating demons that tried to enter through broken windows. 4 minutes. 73 civilians evacuated. They emerged onto the street where news drones had perfect sight lines. Perfect footage of Ultraman carrying children to safety. Of the armored intruders standing among corpses, weapon raised, covered in gore. The optics were flawless. Then more demons arrived. A wave of them pulled from deeper in the quarter, where Voltoom's rift continued pumping them through. 20, 30. They saw the gathered civilians and charged. The figure moved to intercept, started firing. But there were too many coming too fast. Ultraman stepped in front of the civilians. Heat vision swept the charging line. Freeze breath turned the ones that got through into statues that shattered when they hit the ground. 15 seconds. The immediate threat neutralized. See, Ultraman said to the cameras, to the civilians, to everyone watching. This is protection. This is what real heroes do. The figure had already moved. Deeper into the quarter. More screams in that direction. More targets. Ultraman pursued. Found it 2 blocks over, engaged with a brute-class demon that had cornered a family against a building's wall. The figure's shotgun had run dry. It fought with the blade trading cuts, with claws armor scoring under impacts that would have killed an unprotected human. The demon got through the guard. Claws raked across the figure's chest plate. Metal shrieked. The figure stumbled back. Ultraman's fist took the demon's head off. "You're outmatched," Ultraman said to the figure. "Admit it." The figure stabilized. Checked its weapon, found it empty, dropped it. Drew a different firearm from its back. Something massive. Barrel wide enough to fit a fist inside. The weapon's housing glowed with energy signatures that made monitoring equipment spike argent plasma concentrated enough to register as a localized radiation source. "What is that supposed to?" The weapon fired, not a conventional round. Argent-charged ammunition built for targets that laughed at kinetic force. The projectile hit Ultraman's center mass and detonated with energy yield that registered on seismic monitors. Ultraman flew backward through 3 buildings, came to rest in a pile of rubble 4 blocks away. He stood, shook off debris. The hit had actually hurt. Not much, but measurably. Even Kryptonian biology didn't appreciate whatever hell-derived physics that weapon operated on. "Okay," he said. "Now you've made me angry." He flew back toward the figure's position at full speed. Sonic boom shattered windows along the flight path. The figure was gone. Ultraman's enhanced hearing picked up the sounds. Recycling mechanism. Magazine swap. The figure had repositioned during his momentary absence, found high ground on a building rooftop. Ultraman ascended. Found the figure waiting, that massive weapon aimed steady despite its weight. "You can't hurt me with that," Ultraman said. "Not really. You've bought yourself seconds." "Nothing more." The weapon fired again. This time Ultraman was ready. Caught the energy sphere mid-flight, crushed it in his grip before detonation. The residual discharge stung. Survivable. "My turn." He closed the distance in a heartbeat. Grabbed the weapon, tore it from the figure's grip, threw it off the building. Caught the figure by the throat, lifted it off the ground. "This is where you lose," Ultraman said. "Where everyone watching sees you lose, sees that the Syndicate's power is absolute." The figure's response was to drive its wrist blade into Ultraman's forearm. The energy field on the blade's edge cut through Kryptonian skin, found muscle, found bone. Ultraman's grip released. The figure dropped, landed in a crouch, swept Ultraman's legs. Ultraman didn't fall. Just studied the figure with something approaching respect. "You're good. Better than good. But you're fighting the wrong battle. We could work together. End the demon threat. Protect this world." The figure stood. Retrieved a device from its belt. Activated it. A hologram appeared. Projection footage from the array's monitoring station, time-stamped from the initial rift opening. Showed Owlman giving the order. Showed Power Ring expanding the aperture. Showed demons being deliberately captured, stored weaponized. Showed the Syndicate creating the threat they claimed to fight. The upload pinged 2 seconds of raw footage pushed to every open channel in range. Every drone, every network node. Every device capable of receiving broadcast signal. "That's classified intelligence," Ultraman said quietly. The figure crushed the projector. The evidence vanished from the rooftop. But the transmission had completed. The cameras had seen. The networks had received. "You can't—" The rooftop beneath them exploded, not the figure's doing. Power rings constructs shaped as battering rams, punching up through the building's structure. Voltum had decided the figure was too dangerous to tolerate anymore. The building collapsed. Ultraman flew clear. The figure fell with the debris, disappeared into the cascading rubble. Ultraman hovered above the destruction, waited for the figure to emerge, 1 minute. 2. Power ring arrived ascending on a platform of green-black energy. The ring pulsed with manic intensity. "Did you kill it?" Power ring asked. Voice not entirely the bearer's anymore. "The collapse should have," Ultraman said. But thermal imaging showed a heat signature, faint, moving through the debris field at ground level. "Still alive, still functional." "Then finish it," Volatum commanded through Power Ring's mouth. Ultraman descended toward the rubble pile. Heat vision ready. This time he'd vaporize the target. Remove it as a factor completely. The figure emerged from an underground access point 30 meters away, covered in dust. Armor cracked in places, scoring visible across the chest plate, moving slower now. But still armed, still focused, it reached for something maglocked to its back. A hilt, cylindrical, unmarked except for geometric patterns that pulsed with dull red energy. The figure's thumb found the activation stud. The blade ignited. Not the wrist-mounted weapon it had used before, not the energy sword from the earlier engagement. This was something else entirely. The blade extended 2 meters, burning with light that hurt to perceive directly. The energy wasn't just bright, it was wrong. Colors that existed outside standard visual spectrums, wavelengths that made the air around them shimmer and distort. Argent energy, concentrated, weaponized. The kind of physics hell used when conventional matter wasn't malleable enough. "What is that?" Power Ring whispered. The figure didn't answer. Just started walking toward Ultraman. Slow, methodical, inevitable. Ultraman fired heat vision. The twin beams lanced toward the figure. The crucible came up. The beams hit the blade's energy field and scattered, refracted across angles that defied conventional physics. Argent plasma disrupted the coherent light bent. It redirected portions of the energy back along the source vector. One reflected beam caught Ultraman across the shoulder. His own attack partially returned. The impact burned through his suit-scorched Kryptonian skin beneath. "Impossible," Ultraman said. The figure closed to melee range. Swung the crucible in a horizontal arc. Ultraman dodged. Faster than the swing. Faster than anything with that blade's mass should move. The crucible caught his cape. Didn't cut the fabric. Unmade it. Where the argent energy touched molecular bonds, simply ceased. The reinforced material designed to survive atmospheric re-entry built to withstand supersonic stress dissolved into component atoms. The breakdown spread from the contact point disintegration, racing up the cape's length. Ultraman stared at where half his cape had been. At the weapon that could erase matter at fundamental levels. "That's not Earth technology," he said. The figure swung again. Ultraman flew straight up out of range, gaining altitude. Not retreat. Strategic repositioning. Tactical reassessment. The figure watched him ascend. Made no attempt to pursue. Just deactivated the crucible, mag-locked it to the armor's back, retrieved its conventional weapons from the debris field, then resumed its mission, walking toward the next array node, leaving Ultraman in the sky above, leaving him with the knowledge that he'd been driven off, that the cameras had seen it, that the symbol of the crime syndicate's invincibility had flinched. In the command center, Owlman replayed the footage. The hologram, the evidence. The broadcast that had reached 73% of the population within the hour. "Damage assessment," he said. A technician worked the console. Broadcast networks are running the footage. Social media amplification is exponential. Current estimate 81% of the population has seen it or will within 2 hours. Superwoman's counter-narrative. In progress, she's claiming the footage is fabricated. Interdimensional propaganda designed to undermine public trust. Effectiveness, 24% believer, declining. Owlman processed this. The Syndicate's power had always rested on 2 pillars: superior force and controlled information. The entity had just undermined the second pillar, while demonstrating the first wasn't absolute. "Where's Ultraman now?" "Stationary, 2 kilometers above the eastern quarter. He's not moving. Hovering. visible to the entire city, proving he was still there, still watching, still invincible. Except everyone had seen him retreat, had seen him unable to stop the armored figure from walking away. The symbol had cracked, and symbols once broken rarely healed cleanly. The emergency broadcast interrupted every channel at 0400 hours. Not Superwoman's face this time. Her voice overlaid on footage of the Eastern Quarter. Bodies in the streets. Buildings collapsed. Families weeping over losses the Syndicate had promised to prevent. Citizens of Earth 3. Her voice came smooth, practiced. What you witnessed last night was not protection. It was invasion. The entity currently operating in our city does not distinguish between demon and human, between infrastructure and innocence. The footage shifted, showed the armored figure walking past cowering civilians. Context removed. The demons it had been hunting edited out of frame. It claims to fight hell. But who opened the doorway? Who brought these creatures to our world? The next clip showed the hologram evidence. The array footage. Owlman's orders. But the audio had been altered, truncated, made to sound like defensive research rather than exploitation. Desperate measures, Superwoman continued, taken to protect you from threats we barely understood. And now those measures are being weaponized against us. Used to justify an invasion that has already claimed 347 lives. The number was inflated. Actual civilian casualties from demon attacks, 212. The rest had died in structural collapses in the chaos of evacuation and fires started by Ultraman's heat vision. But numbers were malleable when you controlled their reporting. The crime syndicate will not allow this to continue. Today we take definitive action. Today we end the threat. The broadcast cut to pre-recorded footage of Ultraman standing over demon corpses with his cape intact, looking appropriately heroic. Then to Power Ring constructs shimmering around him, the bearer's face hidden by careful camera angles that didn't show the trembling, the corruption, the loss of control. We will protect you, Superwoman said, no matter the cost. The broadcast ended. Normal programming resumed. In the command center, Owlman studied the social media response metrics. Public opinion was stabilizing, not recovering to pre-evidence levels, but no longer in free fall. Acceptable. Superwoman's location, he asked. Western Residential District, Sector 19. She's preparing the next phase. Owlman pulled up the tactical map. Sector 19 was strategic, high population density, multiple schools, shopping centers. The kind of place where casualties would generate maximum emotional impact. Perfect for what came next. Superwoman stood on a rooftop overlooking Sector 19's Central Plaza. Below, morning crowds moved through their routines, parents walking children to school, workers heading to transit stations, normal life continuing because the alternative was admitting the system had failed. She activated her comm. Power Ring, are you in position? Static then. Yes. The voice wasn't entirely Power Ring's anymore. Volthoom bled through in the overtones, the cadence. Release them on my signal. Controlled deployment. I want panic, not massacre. Volthoom wants... I don't care what Volthoom wants. This is theater, not feeding time. Do you understand? Silence. Then understood. Superwoman surveyed the plaza. Cameras were already positioned. News drones hovering at approved distances. Everything choreographed. Everything perfect. She descended, landed in the plaza's center. Civilians noticed immediately moved toward her with a kind of desperate hope that made manipulation effortless. Is it over? A woman asked. Child clutching her leg, too young to understand fear, but old enough to feel it radiating from every adult present. Soon, Superwoman said. Smiled the smile that focus groups had rated most trustworthy. Very soon. She activated the public address system built into her suit. Her voice carried across the plaza, amplified, impossible to ignore. Citizens of Sector 19. I know you're afraid. I know you've seen things that shake your faith in the order we've built together. But I need you to trust me now. Trust that the Syndicate's only goal is your safety. Movement in the crowd. People gathering closer, drawn by the promise of protection, of certainty of someone telling them the nightmare had rules. The entity that invaded our world will be here soon. It follows demon activity. It cannot resist the urge to engage, and when it arrives, she paused. Let the tension build. You will see its true nature. You will see what it does when human lives stand between it and its objective. On-Q Power Ring opened the rift, smaller than the Eastern Quarter deployment. Just 6 demons, carefully selected specimens, large enough to look threatening, aggressive enough to attack on command, but manageable, controllable. They materialized at the plaza's far end. The crowd saw them, screamed, scattered. Superwoman didn't move. Stood her ground arms crossed, watching. The demons advanced, not toward the civilians fleeing in panic, toward Superwoman herself. She waited until they were 10 meters away, then moved. Her speed was calculated for camera work. Fast enough to impress, slow enough to track. She caught the first demon by its throat, threw it through a storefront window. The second received her boot in its chest, the impact loud enough to echo across the plaza. The third got close, claws raking her arm, drawing blood. Superwoman smiled. Perfect. Visible injury, proof of sacrifice. She drew her sword, the blade igniting with magical energy. 2 quick strikes. 2 demons beheaded. The remaining 3 circled cautious now, learning. Power ring, she said into her comm. Guide them toward the school. The school has children. I'm aware. Do it. The demons' behavior shifted. They broke from Superwoman, moved as a unit toward the elementary school 3 blocks north. Parents in the plaza saw the trajectory, understood where the creatures were going. The screams changed pitch, became something primal. Superwoman pursued the demons at a measured pace, fast enough to be chasing, slow enough that they stayed ahead. The cameras followed, capturing her determination, her sacrifice, her heroic effort against overwhelming odds. The demons reached the school, crashed through the entrance, found classrooms full of children who'd been told to shelter in place, who'd followed instructions, who'd believed the adults would protect them. Superwoman arrived 30 seconds later, burst through the damaged entrance, found the demons in the main corridor. They'd cornered a class of first graders, teachers standing between them and the children with nothing but a chair and the kind of courage that made good footage. Get back, Superwoman commanded. She engaged. Blade work and brute strength. The demons fought hard, harder than they should have, if this was truly spontaneous. One caught her across the ribs. Another drew blood from her shoulder. All of it captured. All of it broadcast. Superwoman bleeding, fighting, protecting children while an armored intruder did nothing. She killed the demons, methodically, made sure each kill happened where cameras could see. When the last one stopped moving, she turned to the children. You're safe now, she said, voice gentle, maternal. The Syndicate will always protect you. She activated her comm. Owlman status on the target. En route, 3 minutes out. Perfect. She addressed the teacher. Evacuate these children to the plaza, now. But the demons are dead. Move. The teacher obeyed. Started herding children toward the exits. Superwoman remained in the corridor, surrounded by demon corpses waiting. The armored figure arrived 2 minutes 40 seconds later. Came through the same entrance the demons had used. Weapon raised, scanning for threats. Found Superwoman instead, standing amid carnage, covered in blood that was mostly her own, but looked appropriately heroic. You're late, she said. The figure assessed the situation. Dead demons, empty classrooms, no active threats. It lowered its weapon slightly. I saved them, Superwoman continued. The children you would have let die while you hunted infrastructure, while you pursued your mission without concern for collateral damage. The figure said nothing, started to turn away. No, Superwoman moved to block the exit. You don't walk away this time. You don't get to ignore consequences. The figure stopped, regarded her, still silent. The crime syndicate opened the rift. I know. You broadcast the evidence, but we're trying to close it now. Trying to end this. And you keep interfering, keep destroying the systems we need to seal the breach. The figure's weapon came back up, aimed past her, at something outside the building. Superwoman glanced back, saw what the figure had spotted. More demons, 12 of them, advancing on the plaza where the children had been evacuated, where cameras still filmed, where the crowd had gathered because Superwoman had told them they'd be safe. No, Superwoman said. That's not Power Ring. What are you doing? Static on the comm, then Voltum's voice, undisguised now. Feeding. You wanted theater. I want terror. The demons reached the plaza, started killing. The armored figure moved. Superwoman tried to block it, threw a punch that could shatter steel. The figure deflected, used her momentum to guide her into the wall. Not brutal, efficient. The impact stunned her long enough for it to exit the building. She followed. Found the figure already engaged methodically, eliminating demons, while civilians fled in all directions. The carefully choreographed scenario had become actual chaos. Stop! Superwoman shouted. Not at the figure, at the demons, at Voltum, at the situation spiraling beyond control. The figure ignored her, killed another demon. Then another. Working through the pack with mechanical precision. Superwoman grabbed a fleeing civilian. Woman in her 30s, terror blanking her features. Pulled her close, held her between Superwoman and the figure. Stop or she dies, Superwoman said. The figure paused, turned, assessed. You want to be the hero, Superwoman continued. Then make a choice. Continue your mission and I snap her neck, or surrender and I let her go. The woman struggled. Superwoman's grip tightened. Enough to hurt, enough to make the threat real. The figure raised its weapon, aimed past the hostage, at Superwoman's head. You won't risk it, Superwoman said. You're too precise, too controlled. You don't make mistakes. The figure fired. The round passed within centimeters of the woman's ear. Hit Superwoman in the shoulder. The impact was massive. Argent-charged ammunition built for targets that laughed at conventional force. Superwoman's grip released. The hostage fell, scrambled away. Superwoman staggered back. The wound was serious. Bone shattered, muscle torn, healing factor already working but slow struggling against whatever hell-derived energy that weapon carried. You shot me, she said. Genuine surprise in her voice. Through a hostage position, the figure lowered its weapon, turned back to the demons, finished eliminating them, while Superwoman knelt in the plaza, clutching her shoulder, trying to process what had happened. She'd expected hesitation, expected negotiation, expected the moral paralysis that came when heroes had to choose between innocent lives and mission objectives. But this wasn't a hero. The figure completed its sweep. Confirmed all demons dead, then looked at Superwoman again. The helmet revealed nothing but the posture communicated clearly. You're not hell. You're not a demon. But you used them, enabled them, weaponized them against civilians to maintain power. The figure reached for something on its belt. Another device. Activated it. A hologram appeared. Not broadcast footage this time. Security camera feeds from inside the school. Time-stamped, showing Power Ring releasing the demons, showing them being guided toward the school on Superwoman's orders, showing her deliberately allowing them to reach the children before engaging, showing the theater. The upload pinged. 2 seconds to every network, every device, every channel capable of receiving signal. No, Superwoman said. The figure crushed the projector. The hologram vanished. But the evidence had been sent. The cameras had recorded. The population had received. Superwoman lunged, caught the figure with her good arm, drove it into the pavement. Mounted it, drove her fist into the helmet. Once, twice. The armor cracked. The impacts echoed. "You don't understand," she said between strikes. "We built this world. We maintain order. We do what's necessary to protect them from themselves." The figure caught her wrist. Twisted. Applied leverage that used her strength against her. Reversed their positions. Now the figure was on top Superwoman, pinned beneath armored weight. The wrist blade activated. Pressed against her throat. Not cutting. Not yet. But present. The energy field hummed against her skin. "Kill me then," Superwoman said. "Prove you're exactly what we said you were." The figure held the position for 3 seconds. Long enough for every camera to capture the moment. Long enough for the threat to be undeniable. Then it stood, deactivated the blade, walked away, left her alive. Left her with the knowledge that it had chosen mercy when she'd offered none. The cameras recorded that too. In the command center, Owlman watched Superwoman's gambit collapse in real time. Watched the second evidence dump spread across networks. Watched public opinion metrics crater past recovery thresholds. "Containment?" a technician asked. "Impossible. The evidence is distributed too widely. Encrypted channels, peer-to-peer networks, physical media. We'd need to shut down the entire communications infrastructure." "Should we?" Owlman considered it. Calculated the cost. Total shutdown would work for hours, maybe days. But it would also confirm everything the evidence suggested. Would prove the Syndicate had something to hide. "No, we pivot instead. Acknowledge the methods were harsh but necessary. Frame it as difficult choices made by leaders willing to bear the moral weight." Will that work? It doesn't have to work. It just has to maintain enough support to prevent complete collapse. Ultraman entered the command center. His cape had been replaced, third one this week. The suit showed fresh damage from the Eastern Quarter engagement. Pride showed more. "Where is it now?" Ultraman asked. "Heading northwest, toward the primary array hub. It's going for the main target." "Yes, if it destroys that system, collapse becomes irreversible." "Then I stop it there. No audience, no cameras, just elimination." "You tried that in the Eastern Quarter." Ultraman's jaw clenched. "I wasn't fighting seriously. I was managing optics. This time I fight to kill. And if you fail again, I won't." Owlman studied Ultraman's expression. Saw the ego driving decisions. Saw the symbol trying to repair itself through violence. Saw the trajectory that ended with either total victory or catastrophic defeat. "Take Power Ring," Owlman said. "Use the demons as a force multiplier. Overwhelm it with numbers while you exploit openings. Power Ring is compromised. Voltum is a risk we accept. We're past the point of clean solutions." A technician interrupted. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. Encrypted channel. Source signature matches Alexander Luthor." On screen, Luthor's face appeared. Not in person. Filtered through layers of digital protection that made facial features blur, voice modulation that suggested location without revealing it. "Owlman," Luthor said. "I've been watching your situation deteriorate with great interest. If you're calling to gloat..." "I'm calling to offer assistance, for a price. Not interested. You should be. I know where your entity is going. I know what it needs to complete its mission, and I know how to give it exactly that." Owlman's tactical analysis activated. Calculated Luthor's angle. Found several possibilities, none of them favorable. "What do you want?" "Access. When your little empire collapses, and it will collapse, I want priority rights to the array technology. The dimensional research, everything you've built. You want us to fail. I want you to fail in a controlled manner. Slow collapse versus instant implosion. One leaves salvageable infrastructure, the other leaves nothing but power vacuum and chaos. And you profit either way." "Naturally. But you get to live. Maintain some dignity. Perhaps even rebuild under new management. Consider it a generous offer." Ultraman moved toward the screen. "I'll find you. Personally. You'll try. But first you'll lose to the armored intruder. Then you'll lose to the public. Then you'll have nothing left to threaten with. Luther's smile was audible through the distortion. Call me when you're ready to deal. The offer expires when the array does. The transmission ended. Owlman stood in silence. Calculated options. Ran scenarios. Found decreasing probabilities of success across every variable. Do we contact him? A technician asked. Not yet. We still have assets. Still have paths to victory. What assets? Owlman pulled up the array's schematic. Highlighted the primary hub. The core systems. The infrastructure the entity had been systematically dismantling. We let it think it's winning. Let it reach the hub. Then we trigger the fail-safe. What fail-safe? The one that floods the entire complex with rift energy. Tears reality open at close range. Forces the entity to choose between completing its mission and surviving the exposure. That would destabilize the entire sector. Civilian casualties are acceptable if the alternative is total systemic collapse. Ultraman turned from the blank screen. Went 6 hours. That's when the entity reaches the hub at current pace. You have until then to eliminate it conventionally. If you fail, we proceed with the fail-safe. I won't fail. Then prove it. Take Power Ring. Deploy everything. End this before we have to. Ultraman left without responding. Pride didn't require words. Owlman watched him go. Calculated success probability at 32%, decreasing. The crime syndicate had been built on 2 pillars: force and information. Both were cracking. Soon there would only be desperation. And desperate measures had a way of becoming final ones. The data packet arrived through channels that shouldn't have existed. Embedded in maintenance logs, hidden in traffic monitoring systems, threaded through the array's own security network. Owlman found it at 0600 hours while running system diagnostics. A single file. Encrypted with algorithms his systems recognized but couldn't immediately crack. The signature was unmistakable. Luther, Owlman isolated the packet, ran it through analysis protocols. Found no malware, no exploits, no obvious traps, just information. Compressed coordinates, facility schematics, access codes, and a note. I've been watching since the beginning. Your guest needs this. I suggest you give it to him before Ultraman makes things worse. The offer still stands. Owlman traced the packet's origin. Found 17 proxy servers, 12 false endpoints, and 6 deliberate dead ends. Luther had been inside their network for days, possibly weeks. Observing, recording, waiting for the optimal moment to reveal himself. The realization should have triggered security protocols, system purges, immediate countermeasures. Instead, Owlman opened the file. 3 days earlier, when the sarcophagus had first crashed through the array's sub-level floors, Alexander Luther had been monitoring from a safe house 40 kilometers outside central Syndicate City. The transmission intercepts had been running for months. Part of his ongoing campaign to catalog the Syndicate's vulnerabilities, to map their networks, to prepare for the eventual collapse he knew was coming. The rift opening had been expected. Owlman's dimensional research was hardly subtle. What emerged from the rift had not been. Luther had watched the armored figure tear through demons with professional efficiency, had tracked its trajectory through the city's infrastructure, had analyzed its behavioral patterns, its target selection, its systematic dismantling of the array's supporting systems. This wasn't random destruction. This was surgical strike methodology. Someone had sent a specialist. Luther began comprehensive data collection. Traffic cameras, security feeds, satellite imagery. He tracked the figure's movements, mapped its progress, built predictive models. The pattern became clear within 18 hours. The figure was hunting the array's core infrastructure. Everything it destroyed degraded the rift's stability. It was trying to collapse the dimensional breach completely, which meant it needed access to the primary hub. Luther pulled the hub's schematics, studied the security protocols, the access restrictions, the defensive systems Owlman had installed. Found them comprehensive, nearly impenetrable. unless you knew the maintenance routes, unless you had the override codes, unless you'd been inside the Syndicate's network long enough to map every vulnerability, every backdoor, every shortcut. Luther had all three. He began preparing the data package. Not out of altruism, not out of opposition to the Syndicate's methods. Simply because the figure's objective aligned with his own interests. A controlled collapse of the array served him better than catastrophic failure. The technology could be salvaged, the research preserved, the power vacuum filled by someone with vision instead of brutality. Someone like Alexander Luthor. Present day. The armored figure had stopped moving. Owlman tracked it on the monitoring systems. Location abandoned, industrial sector, 3 kilometers from the array hub. It had been stationary for 43 minutes. Unusual behavior. Previous patterns showed constant forward momentum. Why is it stopping? A technician asked. Unknown. Possible equipment malfunction. Possible tactical assessment. Should we send reconnaissance? No. Monitor only. I want to know what changes. 5 minutes later, the figure moved again. Not toward the hub. Toward a maintenance junction 2 blocks north. Specifically toward a junction that connected to the underground service tunnels. The tunnels that led directly to the hub's primary access points. Owlman pulled up the tunnel schematics. Cross-referenced with the figure's current position. Found the optimal path. Found where it would emerge. Then he saw the data trail. Someone had accessed the tunnel maps through the city's maintenance database. 13 minutes ago. From an external connection. Encrypted heavily enough to trigger alerts, but not heavily enough to prevent the access. Luther wanted to be noticed. Owlman opened a secure channel. Luther, I know you're listening. Static for 5 seconds. Then, of course you do. I made sure of it. You gave it the route. I gave it efficiency. The route it was using would take another 8 hours. The one I provided cuts that to 90 minutes. Why? Because Ultraman is preparing to engage it at the hub perimeter. Because Power Ring is barely maintaining cohesion under Voltum's influence. Because your fail-safe will kill thousands and leave nothing salvageable. Luther's voice carried the calm of someone holding all the cards. I'm accelerating the timeline, forcing resolution before you do something irreversibly stupid. You're manipulating both sides. I'm facilitating inevitable outcomes. The array is going to collapse. The Syndicate is going to fracture. Those are constants. The only variable is how much remains when the dust settles. And you want to be the one standing in the ruins. I want to be the one who rebuilds. There's a difference. Owlman considered terminating the connection. Considered activating countermeasures, deploying teams to hunt Luther's location. Considered that everything Luther had said was accurate. The entity reaches the hub in 90 minutes, Owlman said. What happens then? It destroys the primary stabilization systems. The rift collapses. Demon incursions stop. Your grand project ends. And the Syndicate survives. Diminished, exposed, but alive. Unless you fight it. Unless you force escalation. Then everyone loses. Ultraman won't stand down. Then Ultraman becomes a casualty. The entity has proven it can handle him. Not decisively. He's holding back. Is he, or is that what he tells himself? Luther paused. I've watched all 3 engagements. Each time the entity adapts. Each time Ultraman relies on the same tactics. Each time the gap narrows. If they fight at the hub, Ultraman loses. Publicly? Permanently. You sound certain. I've been watching the entity since it arrived. You've been trying to kill it. I think my assessment is more accurate. Owlman pulled up the engagement data. Ran comparative analysis. Found Luther's assessment supported by probability models. Ultraman's effectiveness was declining. The entity's was increasing. What do you gain from helping it? Owlman asked. Leverage. When this ends, you'll need someone with resources, infrastructure connections outside the Syndicate's compromised networks. I'm making sure I'm that someone by betraying us, by preserving options. I'm not destroying the Syndicate. The entity is doing that. I'm just making sure the collapse doesn't take everything with it. The transmission quality degraded slightly. Luther was moving, changing locations, mid-conversation. Always 3 steps ahead. "I'm sending you additional data," Luther continued. "Structural weak points in the hub, civilian evacuation routes, containment protocols for when the rift destabilizes. Use them or don't. But if you trigger that failsafe, I guarantee you won't live to regret it." Is that a threat? It's a prediction. You flood the hub sector with rift energy, the entity survives. Ultraman might not. Power Ring definitely won't. And the civilian casualties will be recorded, documented, and distributed through channels even you can't suppress. The Syndicate becomes unambiguously villainous. No propaganda spins that. We've managed worse, not with the population already turning against you. Not with concrete evidence of your methods broadcast to 89% penetration. You're one catastrophe away from open revolt. The fail-safe is that catastrophe. Ultraman processed this, ran the social metrics, found Luther's assessment conservative. The actual threshold was lower. "What do you want in exchange for this assistance?" "I already told you. Array technology, research data, access to dimensional science when you're no longer in a position to exploit it." "That's not assistance. That's grave robbing." "The grave is already dug. I'm just claiming mineral rights." Luther's tone shifted, became almost conversational. "Here's what happens next. The entity reaches the hub, destroys the core systems. The rift collapses. You survive with reduced power but intact infrastructure. I acquire the array research. We both get what we want. And if we resist, then I release the complete archive. Every order, every authorization, every civilian casualty you've deemed acceptable. Every decision that proves the Syndicate isn't protecting Earth-3. It's exploiting it. You've had that archive the entire time, since day 1. I've been in your systems longer than you've been monitoring the entity. The question is whether I use it to bury you or leverage you." Ultraman terminated the connection, sat in silence, calculated options. Luther had maneuvered them into a corner. Fight the entity and lose publicly. Trigger the fail-safe and lose permanently. Surrender and lose power. All paths led to diminishment, but some paths led to survival. The armored figure entered the maintenance tunnels exactly where Luther's data had indicated. The route was direct, efficient, bypassing the security choke points Ultraman had established. It moved through the underground network with tactical precision. No wasted motion, no deviation. Someone had provided excellent intelligence. The figure stopped once. Found a data node embedded in the tunnel wall. Unmarked, hidden. Not part of the city's official infrastructure. A small device blinkered beside it. Digital display showing a simple message. "Straight ahead, 3rd junction. Override code Theta 66 Alpha." The figure studied the message. Processed the implications. Someone was helping. Someone with deep access to Syndicate systems. The figure crushed the device, continued forward. Used the information anyway. Pragmatism over pride. Ultraman watched the figure's progress through thermal imaging. Watched it use Luther's route, Luther's codes, Luther's intelligence. Watched it approach the hub perimeter, where Ultraman was positioning for engagement. "Should we warn Ultraman?" a technician asked. "He's already aware. His pride won't let him adjust tactics. Then he's going to lose." "Possibly. But we need him to fight anyway. Need the entity focused on direct combat rather than noticing the fail-safe preparations. You're still going to trigger it, as a contingency. If Ultraman fails, if the entity reaches the core, we have 30 seconds to decide. Controlled collapse versus catastrophic exposure." Luther said, "Luther is operating from self-interest. His analysis is valuable, but not definitive." Ultraman pulled up the fail-safe controls. Ran system checks. Found everything operational. "We maintain all options until we're forced to choose." The monitors showed Ultraman descending toward the hub perimeter. Power Ring was already there, the bearer's control deteriorating visibly. The ring pulsed erratically, Volthoom's influence manifest in the green-black energy that writhed like living corruption. "Deploy remaining demon reserves," Owlman ordered. "Everything Volthoom has stored. Saturate the area." "Sir, that's over 200 specimens." "The containment. Won't matter if the array collapses anyway. Deploy them." The technician complied. The rift opened above the hub complex. Demons poured through in a cascade. Not tactical deployment this time, pure, overwhelming force. The armored figure emerged from the tunnel access, found itself facing a killing field. 200 demons. Power ring barely controlling them. Ultraman hovering above heat vision already charging. And somewhere in the distance, Luther watching through hijacked cameras, collecting data, preparing his next move. The figure assessed the situation, calculated odds, found them unfavorable, then started forward anyway, because unfavorable wasn't impossible, and impossible had never stopped it before. Luther watched from his safe house. Watched the Syndicate commit everything to this moment. Watched the entity walk into what should have been certain death. "Fascinating," he said to the empty room. His systems were already recording. Multiple redundancies, distributed storage encryption that would survive anything short of planetary destruction. When this ended, he'd have documentation of the entire crisis. Complete archive of the Syndicate's fall. Priceless leverage for rebuilding. He opened a secondary channel. This one not to Owlman. To someone else. Someone who'd been waiting for the right moment to act. "It's time," Luther said. "Move your people into position. When the hub goes down, I want the Eastern District secured within 20 minutes. "Understood." "What about the Syndicate's response?" "There won't be one. They'll be too busy managing catastrophic failure. By the time they notice you've moved, it'll be too late to respond effectively, and the entity completes its mission and leaves. It has no interest in Earth-3's politics." "You're certain?" "I've watched it ignore every opportunity to seize power, to exploit chaos, to leverage its capabilities for control. It's here to close the rift, nothing more. Then we proceed." Luther terminated the connection. Watched the monitors. Watched the entity engage 200 demons while Ultraman descended for the killing blow. Watched the Syndicate's empire begin its final collapse. Everything according to plan. Not the Syndicate's plan, not the entity's plan. His plan, the only one that mattered. In the command center, Owlman's hand hovered over the fail-safe activation. 30 seconds to decide. Controlled collapse versus saving the entity for study. Power versus knowledge. Survival versus advancement. The metrics shifted. Public opinion dropping. Ultraman's probability of success, 18%. Entity's probability of reaching the core, 73%. The numbers made the decision. Owlman's hand moved toward the abort sequence, then stopped. A new transmission, encrypted, source unknown. Message simple. The array dies today. You can go with it or without it. Choose wisely. Not Luther's signature. Someone else. Someone watching. Someone who knew about the failsafe. Owlman pulled his hand back. Watched the monitors. Watched the entity tear through demons with systematic precision. Watched Ultraman's heat vision miss by centimeters. Watched Power Ring's constructs shatter under the strain. Watched his empire crack. And realized he'd been outmaneuvered. Not by the entity, by Alexander Luther. By someone who'd been planning this collapse longer than the Syndicate had been planning the array. The question was no longer whether they'd fall, only how far, and who'd profit from the landing. The hub complex occupied 12 square blocks in Central Syndicate City's industrial core. 3 levels above ground, 7 below. The array's primary stabilization systems lived in the deepest sublevel buried under reinforced concrete and security protocols that assumed any threat would come from outside. The armored figure had come from below. It emerged from the maintenance tunnels into Sublevel 7's primary corridor. The space was vast, cathedral-like, designed to house machinery that bent reality for profit. Conduits ran along the ceiling, pulsing with energy that made the air taste metallic. The rift's anchor point hummed somewhere ahead, a bass frequency that bypassed ears and went straight to the nervous system. 200 demons filled the corridor. They'd been waiting. Power Ring's constructs herded them into position, corralled them into a living barricade between the figure and its objective. The demons sensed prey, sensed threat, sensed the thing that had been killing them since it arrived. They attacked as a wave. The figure opened fire. The massive weapon, argent-charged rounds built for Hell's architecture, tore through the leading edge. Each shot punched through multiple targets, the blessed ammunition designed to ensure demons stayed dead. The front rank collapsed into meat and ichor. The second rank climbed over the corpses. The figure switched weapons. Drew the crucible. The blade ignited 2 meters of energy that made reality flinch. It waded into the mass, cutting methodically. No wasted motion. Each swing bisected each thrust, found vitals. Each kill created space for the next engagement. Above, Ultraman descended through the hub's shattered roof. He'd been waiting for this, watching the entity struggle against overwhelming numbers. Watching it commit fully to close combat, both hands occupied, vulnerable to attack from unexpected angles. Heat vision lanced down. The figure sensed it. Moved. Not fast enough. The beams caught its shoulder, melted through armor plating, found the mechanisms beneath. The figure's left arm locked servos, fusing under thermal stress. Ultraman landed in the corridor, moved immediately. No speech, no posturing, just violence. He grabbed a demon, threw it into 3 others. Cleared space. Created an opening to the figure. The figure deactivated the crucible with its functioning hand. Switched to the wrist-mounted blade. Continued killing demons one-handed. Ultraman eliminated 5 more demons with heat vision. Efficient, brutal. Then he focused on the figure. "End this," he said. 2 words. All that was necessary. The figure killed another demon. Then another. Working through the pack with mechanical persistence despite the disabled arm. Ultraman flew forward. Grabbed the figure from behind, lifted it off the ground. The grip was absolute. Kryptonian strength versus damaged armor. The figure drove its elbow backward. Caught Ultraman in the throat. The impact wouldn't have hurt someone without Kryptonian physiology. Ultraman's grip loosened fractionally. The figure twisted, brought the wrist blade around, carved a line across Ultraman's chest. The energy field cut through the suit, drew blood. Not deep, but visible. Ultraman threw the figure into the corridor wall. The impact cratered reinforced concrete. The figure fell, landed in a crouch, came up with a device in its hand. Grenade, adhesive, already armed. It threw the device. Not at Ultraman. At the ceiling conduit directly above him, the grenade attached, detonated. The conduit ruptured, spilling rift energy in a cascade. The dimensional plasma was unstable, corrosive, eating through anything it touched. Ultraman flew clear. The energy missed him by meters. Splashed across the corridor floor, dissolved demons caught in the spill, spread in an expanding pool of reality breakdown. He didn't acknowledge the tactic, just moved toward the corridor's far end, toward the rift's anchor point. If the entity wanted to destroy infrastructure, he'd reach the objective first. Defend it. End this. The figure moved to intercept. They met in the corridor's center. Ultraman drove a punch toward the helmet with enough force to shatter tank armor. The figure didn't catch the fist. Couldn't. Kryptonian strength was absolute, but it caught the line of it. 2 centimeters off-center. Redirected the trajectory, used Ultraman's momentum to guide the punch past the target into the wall behind. Ultraman's fist embedded in concrete. The figure used that moment to drive the wrist blade into the gap between Ultraman's helmet and chest plate. Found skin. Found the wound from the Eastern Quarter engagement. Reopened it. Ultraman roared. Tore his hand free from the wall. Backhanded the figure hard enough to send it tumbling across the corridor. The figure crashed through. 2 demons came to rest against a support column. The damaged arm had separated at the shoulder joint, servos finally failing completely. It hung useless dead weight. The figure released the malfunctioning limb. Let it fall. Continued forward. Ultraman closed distance. No more words, just systematic destruction. He was faster, stronger, more durable. The outcome was inevitable. The figure drew a device from its belt. Cylindrical, glowing with the same red energy that powered the crucible. It activated the device, threw it toward the rift's anchor point. The device stuck to the primary stabilization pylon, started counting down. 30 seconds. Ultraman flew toward it, reached for the device. His hand passed through it. Hologram. The real device was 20 meters to the left, already at 15 seconds. Ultraman spun, found it, moved to disarm. The figure tackled him from behind. They crashed together into the device. Ultraman's superior strength won immediately, threw the figure off. But 3 seconds had elapsed. The countdown read 12. Ultraman crushed the device. It detonated in his hand. Not an explosion, a pulse. Concentrated argent energy designed to disrupt dimensional anchoring. The blast spread across the anchor point, severing connections, dissolving bindings, collapsing the mathematical framework that kept the rift stable. The rift convulsed. Its edges began to contract, reality reasserting itself against the foreign intrusion. But the array's stabilization systems fought back, pumping more energy into the failing anchor. The rift expanded again, tearing wider, even as the foundation crumbled. Seizure. The tier couldn't close while the machines forced it open. Couldn't stay open with the anchor destroyed. It spasmed between states, each oscillation stressing the dimensional framework. In the command center, alarms screamed. Destabilization cascade, a technician reported. The anchor is failing. Rift expansion is uncontrolled. Owlman studied the readings. The rift was tearing itself apart, contracting and expanding in oscillations that would eventually rip the entire hub sector into dimensional fragments. Time to catastrophic failure. 4 minutes, maybe less. Evacuate the hub complex, all personnel, now. What about Ultraman? He's already there. Either he stops it or he doesn't. Owlman pulled up the failsafe controls. His hand moved toward the activation sequence. Stopped. The failsafe would flood the area with more rift energy. Would make the destabilization worse, not better. Luther had been right. The realization tasted like ashes. Sublevel 7 was disintegrating. The rift's convulsions sent shockwaves through the structure. Support columns cracked. Ceiling tiles fell. The corridor became a death trap of failing infrastructure and spatial anomalies that made straight lines curve. The remaining demons fled. Whatever survival instinct Hell's armies possessed, it recognized a losing battle. Power Ring arrived, ascending through a floor access. The bearer's face was barely visible beneath Voltum's corruption, the skin mottled green-black, the eyes glowing with light that belonged to something else. The rift is dying, Voltum said through Power Ring's mouth. Unacceptable. I require. The figure shot Power Ring, center mass, argent round. The impact threw the bearer backward, construct shields shattering the ring, flaring wildly as it tried to compensate for catastrophic damage. Voltum screamed. Not through Power Ring's mouth. Through the ring itself, a sound that existed outside normal acoustic ranges. The scream was fury, was hunger, was the rage of something being severed from its host. The ring pulsed once, twice. The connection broke. Voltum was forced back, expelled to whatever binding held it, the link to Earth 3 cut. The ring went dark, not destroyed, just empty. A vessel without occupant. Power Ring collapsed, still breathing, barely, but free. The figure stepped over the body, continued toward the rift's anchor point. Ultraman blocked the path. No words this time, no declarations, just recognition that one of them would leave this corridor and one wouldn't. He moved faster than before, all restraint abandoned, all concern for optics irrelevant. Pure Kryptonian combat capability unleashed. He caught the figure's weapon arm, crushed it. Bone broke, metal deformed. The weapon clattered free, drove a knee into the figure's midsection. Armor cracked. The figure doubled over, grabbed the helmet with both hands, started to twist, to separate head from body. The figure drove the wrist blade upward, into Ultraman's abdomen, through muscle, through organs that Kryptonian biology protected but couldn't make invincible. Ultraman gasped, released the helmet, staggered back. The wound was serious, not fatal, but serious enough to matter. The figure stood, one arm destroyed, torso armor fractured. Breathing labored audible through the helmet's damaged seals. It reached for the crucible, activated the blade one-handed. The hub's atmosphere had changed. Rift energy leaked from the damaged conduits, saturated the air, created dimensional instability that made physics negotiable. The crucible's energy field fed on the contamination, burned brighter, cut deeper. Ultraman fired heat vision, both beams, full intensity, sustained. The kind of attack that melted through starship hulls. The crucible came up. The beams hit the energy field and scattered. The blade's unique physics amplified by the hub's dimensional bleeding, treating Kryptonian heat vision like an inconvenience. Ultraman stopped firing, processed what he'd witnessed. The figure advanced. One step, another. The crucible hummed reality, warping around its edge. Ultraman charged. Speed versus persistence. He'd end this in close quarters. No distance. No time for the blade to matter. The figure swung. Ultraman was faster, dodged the blade's physical edge. But the crucible's energy field extended beyond steel. The dimensional contamination in the hub fed it, made it reach farther, bite harder. The field caught Ultraman's cape, his shoulder, his arm. Where the argent energy touched matter, ceased. Not cut, unmade. Molecular bonds dissolved at fundamental levels. Kryptonian invulnerability meant nothing when the attack erased the concept of durability. His arm disintegrated from shoulder to elbow. Ultraman screamed, flew backward, crashed through the corridor wall, through the next room, through the structural supports beyond. The hub complex shuddered. Load-bearing elements compromised, cascading structural failure imminent. The figure deactivated the crucible, picked up its fallen weapon with its one functional hand, continued toward the rift's anchor point. The rift was still convulsing, still fighting between collapse and expansion. The stabilization systems couldn't compensate anymore. Too much damage, too much strain. But they kept trying, kept forcing the tear open, kept the seizure active. The figure reached the primary pylon, studied the configuration, found the critical junction points, raised its weapon, started shooting. Each round hit a specific target. Conduits, regulators, the mathematical processors that calculated dimensional coordinates. Systematic destruction. One shot per component, no waste. The machines died, and when they died, when the array stopped fighting to hold the rift open, the tear finally lost its anchor. Reality healed. The rift contracted smoothly now. No more oscillations, just closure. The tear sealed itself like a wound, pulling demons back through, reclaiming everything that had crossed over. In the command center, Owlman watched the readings stabilize. Rift closure rate accelerating. Estimated complete seal in 90 seconds. The hub, structural integrity at 18%. Full collapse in 60 seconds. The numbers overlapped. The rift would close. The hub would fall. Everything would end in approximately 1 minute. Owlman opened the emergency broadcast channel. All units abandon the hub complex. I repeat, abandon the complex. Catastrophic failure imminent. He terminated the connection, sat in silence, watched his empire's foundation crumble on 17 different monitors. Found he felt nothing, just calculation, just analysis, just the cold assessment of a strategist watching predictions become reality. The Syndicate would survive this, diminished, exposed, but alive. Luther would claim the array's remains, would rebuild using Syndicate infrastructure, would emerge from the chaos as the new power, and Owlman would have to decide whether to fight that or accommodate it. Later, right now, he just watched. Then, Sublevel 7 was collapsing. The ceiling came down in sections. The floor cracked open into the sublevels beneath. The rift's anchor point was disintegrating the machinery that had torn reality apart, now tearing itself apart. The figure completed its work. Final shot, final target, final confirmation that the array would never open another rift. Mission complete. It turned to leave. Found Ultraman standing in the corridor behind it. The Kryptonian was a ruin. One arm gone, abdomen bleeding, cape destroyed, suit shredded, but still standing, still conscious, still embodying the symbol he'd built his identity around. "You win," Ultraman said, voice rough. The figure said nothing. "But you're not leaving." "You can't." First words it had spoken since arriving on Earth 3. Ultraman froze. "You talk. You're finished. And that doesn't matter to me. I'm still..." The ceiling groaned. A support beam fell between them, crashed into the floor. The corridor was sectioning, dividing into isolated pockets that would become tombs when the building fell. Ultraman turned away, flew toward the nearest exit, not running, just accepting reality. Survival over pride. The figure watched him go. Made no attempt to follow. It found a support column that was still intact. Leaned against it. Waited. 20 seconds. The rift's final convulsion came. The tear in reality sealed completely. The dimensional connections severed. Earth 3 and Hell were separated again. The breach closed. The invasion ended. 10 seconds. The figure's remaining hand reached for something on its belt. A device. Small, portable, glowing with energy that suggested elsewhere. 5 seconds. Activated it. A portal opened. Not to Hell. Somewhere else. Somewhere the array had never accessed, the Syndicate had never mapped. Luther had never predicted. The figure stepped through. The portal closed. The hub complex collapsed. 12 square blocks of infrastructure folded in on itself in a cascading failure that registered as a minor earthquake. The sound carried across half the city. The debris cloud rose 300 meters. When it settled, nothing remained but rubble and rebar and the broken foundation of an empire's ambition. 3 hours later, the broadcast went live at noon. Every channel, every screen. Emergency override that couldn't be dismissed or ignored. Superwoman's face appeared. No makeup this time. Visible exhaustion. The shoulder wound bandaged but bleeding through. Real damage. Real cost. "Citizens of Earth 3, she began. "The dimensional crisis is over. The rift has been sealed. The demon threat has been eliminated." She paused. "Let the good news sink in. But the cost has been severe. The array is destroyed. Our research is lost. The future we promised you, clean energy, dimensional exploration, technological advancement, has been taken from us." Another pause. Calculated. Rehearsed despite the exhaustion. "We made hard choices, difficult decisions that leaders must make to protect their people. The intruder made irreversible ones for all of us. It didn't just close the rift. It destroyed our ability to harness the potential we discovered." The camera cut to footage of the hub's collapse. Then to Ultraman landing at a medical facility, missing an arm, his invincibility proven false. "The crime syndicate will rebuild. We will recover. We will continue to protect you. But we must be honest about what we've lost. About the burden we bear for the safety you now enjoy." She regarded the camera directly. "The population, thank you for your trust. Together we will emerge from this stronger." The word "together" again. Still doing its work, still binding. The broadcast ended. In the command center, Owlman reviewed the social metrics. Public opinion was stabilizing, not approving, but no longer in free fall. Acceptable. Ultraman entered. The medical staff had done what they could. The arm wouldn't regenerate. Kryptonian biology could heal, but it couldn't replace. He'd be visibly diminished for the rest of his existence. The symbol permanently cracked. Luther, Ultraman asked, has made contact, offering reconstruction assistance, technical support, resource allocation, for a price, always. But the price is now negotiable. He wanted the array. The array no longer exists. So we're free of him. We're dependent on him. There's a difference. Ultraman moved to the window, stared out at the city, at the smoke still rising from the hub's ruins. Did it escape, he asked. Unknown. No body recovered. Thermal imaging lost tracking in the final collapse. It could still be here. Possible. But unlikely. Its mission was complete. It had no reason to remain. What if it comes back? Alman considered the question. Ran scenarios, calculated probabilities. Then we'll be ready. We'll have learned from this encounter, adapted our strategies, improved our capabilities. Will we? Alman didn't answer. Because the honest response was uncertain. Because the Syndicate's power had always been built on the illusion of invincibility, and that illusion was broken now. Visible to everyone, recorded, distributed, permanent. The Empire hadn't fallen, but it had cracked, and cracks once formed rarely stopped spreading. Watana. Alexander Luther stood in the hub's ruins. His team had moved in within 30 minutes of the collapse. Salvage crews, data recovery specialists, engineers who could extract value from devastation. They'd found fragments, pieces of the array's technology, burned, twisted, contaminated by dimensional residue, but salvageable. How much can we recover? Luther asked. Less than we hoped, but enough. The lead engineer gestured to a cart of components. Fragments sufficient to reconstruct the fundamental principles. Data modules with partial research archives. Exotic matter samples that survived the collapse. Enough to understand how they did it. Given time and resources, yes, we won't need to start from zero. We'll start from their mistakes. Luther smiled. Then we have what we need. He surveyed the ruins, the collapsed infrastructure, the broken monument to the Syndicate's hubris. Beautiful. His teams would extract the critical components. The rest, 90% of the rubble, could remain. Evidence of the Syndicate's failure. Proof that Luther had been right all along. Secure the perimeter, Luther ordered. Focus on data modules and exotic components only. I want the critical materials extracted within 72 hours. Leave the rest. The Syndicate will notice. The Syndicate will accept it. They need us now. That's the cost of failure. He turned away from the ruins, toward the future he'd been building in the shadows, while the Syndicate had been building monuments to their own importance. Earth 3 was changing. Power was redistributing. And Alexander Luther intended to be standing in exactly the right place when the new order emerged. 6,000 kilometers away, in a dimension adjacent to Earth. 3, but separate from it, a rift opened. Small, controlled, temporary. The armored figure stepped through, into a space between spaces. A dimensional corridor used for transit between realities. The crucible was deactivated, but not discarded. The damaged armor would be repaired. The mission logs would be updated. Earth 3 rift sealed, invasion ended, enablers confronted. Mission complete. Next coordinate locked, selected. Portal opened, the figure stepped through. Different reality this time. Different architecture. Different faces making the same mistakes. Behind it, Earth 3 continued turning. The Syndicate continued ruling. Luther continued planning. The population continued surviving. The rift was closed. But the scar remained. A localized dimensional anomaly. A thin spot in reality where hell had touched Earth 3. Where the barrier between dimensions had been compromised. It would heal, eventually. Dimensional fabric was resilient, but scars never completely faded. And sometimes, in the right light, under the right conditions, you could still see where the wound had been, where hell had tried to enter, and where something different had entered to stop it. The Doomslayer was gone. But Earth 3 would remember that some threats couldn't be controlled. Some forces couldn't be negotiated with. Some doors once opened required violence to close. And some protectors didn't ask for permission. They simply were.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss our future videos. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.